Okay, here we go. Hello, Steeler Nation, and welcome to your SteelerNation.com podcast, sponsored by Total Sports Enterprises. I'm your host, G.Stryker, and with me is one of the talented trio from our Yinshurst podcast, Samantha James. Samantha, how are you doing today?
Good. How are you?
Doing good. Welcome from the West Coast out there toward Arizona. So we're happy to see you here on the show today.
Thank you. Thank you. Yes, it's quite a bit of a different temperature. I think right now it's almost 90 degrees today.
Wow. Oh,
Yeah.
and we had a beautiful day here in the at least the Baltimore DC area. It was closer to the high 60s by the end of the day, but 90, my gosh, you're already sweating out there.
Yeah.
So I wanted to start off with a little bit of interesting news from your neck of the woods, and that's the Steelers just signing running back Kellen Ballage to a 1-year contract, and he's an ASU grad right there from Arizona State University.
Yes, he is.
Great.
I actually really like that signing.
Good. Did you watch him play in college at all either?
I saw some of the games. I'm not a huge college sports fan as far as following the football, but obviously being at ASU, it's 10 miles from my house.
Yeah.
Super close. So yeah, I really like him.
So I was doing a little bit of research on him today. He looks like a heck of a pass catcher out of the backfield. Didn't really have huge numbers in college with what I've seen here on the board. Let me bring up his stats here for a bit. His best rushing years, it looks like 653 yards rushing as a junior, 536 as a sophomore, 653, 536 as a junior, and 669 as a senior. Big game in his junior year against Patrick Mahomes and Texas Tech in 2016 when he rushed for 7 touchdowns and added a FBS record 8th touchdown with a receiving touchdown to outduel Texas Tech and Patrick Mahomes there in an early game where he had an 8 touchdown game, which is just insane.
Yeah,
And
that's crazy.
so I expected to check his stats and just see him just flooded with touchdowns, but he only had 14 touchdowns that season and didn't have more than 6 the rest of his seasons there. But you know, I understand the ebb and flow of games and how someone is used, but at least watching the highlights from that Texas Tech game got me a little bit excited on the way that our new offense coordinator, Matt Canada, utilizes misdirections, formations, personnel to gain advantages. And the biggest advantage that Arizona State had against Texas Tech in that game was they could not stop Ballage in the Wildcat on the goal line. That was like a money touchdown every time, and he just run it left, run it right. Sometimes he get tackled, sometimes he run over a guy, but every time he was getting into the end zone. So it was just fun to watch the way he was utilized in that game and just kind of wet the chops there of Steeler Nation if we're going to be able to get him onto the field and utilize him within this new scheming for Matt Canada.
And I think that's exactly what it is. We obviously know that our run game was horrible last season, and we know that that is one of the top things that we're looking at going into this off season or into this season. So I think the fact that I didn't see that signing coming at all, like I didn't see, oh, they're talking to him, there's this rumor, there was none of that happening. And then all of a sudden it's like, oh, we signed another running back. And I'm like, okay, that gives us some more depth. We're probably going to be cutting one at that because I'm hoping that we draft one in the draft. But
yeah,
Matt Canada, I'm so excited to see what he brings to the table, because normally you would say the word Wildcat and I would cry.
Oh, yeah.
So I don't know. This is a fresh start, and I'm really excited about that.
And it's tough also because I also remember another very versatile back that's currently on the Steelers roster, and that is Jalen Samuels. And literally, he was the Swiss Army knife when he was in college as well, almost like an H-back slot receiver. Mm-hmm. He had close to 300 catches, I think, in college, and I thought he was going to be utilized more of a slot receiver, but the Steelers turned him into a running back. But we did also utilize him as a wild card quarterback when we had the issue when Ben was out during the seasons for a couple games. One game he was excellent at it. The other game, the Ravens figured him out and just made him look kind of dreadful in a couple of those plays, unfortunately. But still another person on the team that has the ability to run kind of a wildcat offense should we need to utilize that kind of personnel within the Matt Canada scheme. And in one respect, you hate to see Ben come off the field. But in a second respect now, Sam, is we know as Steeler fans, Ben is not going to quarterback sneak no matter how close he is for a first down. He's had one quarterback sneak in 3 years.
Yeah.
And before that, he's had one quarterback sneak in 5 years. So like Haley's offense never quarterback sneak. I remember he ran one last year, and he got it fortunately, but he just, I don't know why they don't want to, they're worried about him getting hurt. He's the same size as Brady, and Brady runs his own sneaks all the time.
It's insane. That's a really good, interesting point, because I know Steelers Twitter melts down every time that we're like, quarterback sneak. Like, what are you doing? Like screaming at our TV. And we're just like, what is so hard about that? And Ben is not a little guy. Like, you could absolutely do it. So I'm hoping, again, I don't think it's going to happen even with Canada, but we can always be hopeful. The more weapons we have, the more trick plays that we have up our sleeve, not everyone knowing what we're going to be doing every single play of the game, figuring out our offense.
Yeah.
That. So.
And I see you too, Ryan, over there on Facebook. We're working out the chat box. I think Sam can see you too. She's working on the chat box as well. And I want to at least welcome everybody. I know Sam's got a drink. I'm going to crack my beer tonight because, I've been doing recently here, since we're no longer sponsored by a beer, I get a new fun beer from a brewery. And I've been going pretty hard on Adroit Theory here last couple weeks. This one's called Illusion of Safety. And these beers are essentially like a fruited goza. So really, really light in color. It's almost looks like a wine when you're drinking it, but they're like a juice. It's almost like a fruit juice type beer, real low in percentage, perfect for the summer. And I love these. My wife loves these. So raise a glass. What are you having tonight, Sam?
I have vodka and lemonade.
Cheers.
Yes, cheers.
So cheers to you, Sam. Cheers to you, Steeler Nation. And thank you, Steeler Nation, for joining us and making this as fun as this podcast, just as fun as it can possibly be. And because I've got to mention also, and something that I've just been thinking about and haven't said it out loud yet, but the Steeler Nation platform is the single largest fan-run platform on the internet of all social media. So it's thanks to you, Steeler Nation, for making us what we are and giving us the platform to do what we love. So cheers.
Yes, cheers.
Oh my gosh, that's delicious. Crap.
Good. I love like sour beers, like framboise.
Yeah, and this one has black currant and some kind of plum and cherry. So it's the cherry is very prominent. I don't black currant. You say currant, I say currant.
Right? How do you say that?
It's like, how do you say that? But I do know it's pronounced goza. So anybody wanted to know, it's goose, it's goza. So definitely a good tasty goza there by our friends over at Adroit Theory out of Percival, Virginia. I just end up spending $100, $200 every time I go there. So I got to stop going there. Unfortunately, it's an hour away, so I can't go there every day.
Yeah, that's nice.
So big news today. Also, we learned that the NFL schedule is now going to expand to 17 games. And there's been talk about this back and forth. And I know this has been a big sticking point with the NFLPA. It's still technically 20 total games. We had 16 regular season games, 4 preseason games. Now we're adjusting to 17 regular season games, 3 preseason games, and it looks like our conference or our division is going to be linked up with the NFC West. Mm-hmm. So all of the slotting that happened, the first place team plays the first place, second, third, fourth. So Steelers are going to be playing Seattle, and our whole division hosts the entire NFC West. So NFC West gets one less home game. Our division gets one extra home game. Next year it flops. So we'll have one less home game next year, and it just rotates back and forth. And that looks like the way that they're going to start doing it. So that's an interesting aspect. So we were talking back and forth, I know, and conversing on the writers chat today, and talking about what are they going to do? They're going to start the season a week earlier. Are they going to keep the Super Bowl in the same slot? And it has officially come out that they're going to start the season the same time they normally start the season. And I believe we had, I know I readjusted that in my article, and I don't have my article up. Dang it. Look at me, not even organized. But I'll pop that up quickly because Dan Graziani, I know I clicked his Twitter and I added it to the article. And yeah, Dan Graziano from ESPN mentioned that The season will still start on September 9th. So that means that the Super Bowl will be pushed back an extra week. No longer the first Sunday in February, but now the second Sunday in February. How does this all make you feel, Sam? Because I know this is a big change. It's the first time that they've expanded the league seasons for decades. It seems like
Yeah.
yeah.
I mean, from my perspective, I love it because I live on the West Coast. So for me, that's an opportunity. That might be more games that I get to see here if they're flip-flopping every year, because typically it's every 8 years that they flip-flop, right? Every 4, but every 8 that they're actually back in Arizona. So for me, and I'm like, okay, this could be an opportunity that I get to see them play here in my home state, which if you've ever been in Arizona for a Steelers game, it's crazy. It's
a lot of Steeler fans in Arizona.
Yeah, it's a Steelers home game essentially. So I think that's super exciting. I went not last season, but the season before here. And so I just think it's great. I do worry about injuries though. That's obvious, you know. So
having the extra game,
right, because preseason, like they're preseason. No one's going that hard. You're trying out some rookies, seeing how they play. But if you're adding an extra game, people want that game. They want to win that. So I do worry about injuries.
Yeah. And for me too, there's one thing that no one's talked about that I mentioned in my article as well here at SteelerNation.com. Adding the extra game now means you have an extra chance of breaking these, all-time records for a season, because now you have an extra game to play these. So as time goes on, we're going to start seeing these record 2,000-yard rushing seasons start dropping. There will be an NFL receiver that will hit 2,000 yards now, I think, with that extra game and a healthy enough season. And that was one of those like unattainable goals. It seems like it's just out of reach. Like Megatron almost had it the one year. It looked like AB had a shot at it the one year as well. So that's going to be something else. And the most touchdowns for a season, most passing yardage for a season. So it'll be kind of exciting for the fans, but it's kind of different because they're doing it now in 17 games as opposed to 16 games. And it kind of discredited also, back in my day when Jim Brown was the best player ever in the NFL, he was getting all the touchdowns all the time. He would have 800 touchdowns in a 17-game season. Yeah, like that kind of stuff. Now we're going to have those arguments we're going to be the old people now. I remember back in the 16-game seasons, he would have never had that in 16 games, but now it's like
it's going to be. I remember when they introduced 17-season games. Like I don't know, it's crazy.
and I've got to respond here to Robert on he's one of my boys there from SteelerNation.com. He mentioned over here on the chat, sad that Sam's drink is more manly than mine, and I do agree. The vodka back is definitely a little bit more manly than my fruited back on my fruited goza.
That's hilarious.
Plus, she has a much higher alcohol content, so I'm definitely with you on that.
Don't worry, I only put a little bit of vodka. It is a Tuesday night, right? It's Tuesday, so I'm going to be hungover tomorrow at work, but I do like my vodka.
So let's run off. We got a quick question here from Ryan. Sam, can you read off Ryan's question about that he has from Facebook?
So my restream's actually not loading them.
Oh, okay. Never mind. Then I'll pull it up. Yeah, we're still trying to work this out. We'll probably work on getting you the app. That way it kind of streams a little cleaner. But Ryan wanted to know what we think about the addition of Haskins. Is that good or bad?
I think it's good. I think it makes Mason feel like, okay, I need to be out Haskins, and I think vice versa, right? Because going into next season, that's a concern that I had. All right. We assume this is Ben's last year. We're going to have Mason and Haskins.
Yep.
They're going to become free agents, assuming the Steelers are going to keep one of them.
Yeah.
I feel like this year, they're competing against each other.
And Ryan knows my answer. He's listened to a bunch of these. I always called Haskins not a low risk player, but a no risk player, because we got him on league minimum, 1 year contract. If he does anything, awesome. Like we got a player. If he doesn't do anything, no big deal. We cut him. He doesn't cost us a thing.
Exactly.
So I'm excited to see if he can work into the system and see how he will do. Yeah. I know he's not all that mobile to really get into the nuances of this Matt Canada offense that I'm anticipating because we really don't have a quarterback that fits it yet. So I don't know if we're going to draft a quarterback later on that might be a little bit more mobile, or try to utilize one of these wildcat quarterbacks, possibly either draft or some personnel that we have now. So Justin from Twitter says, what running back would you cut? Because now obviously we've got a lot of running backs in the room. We really don't have to cut anyone yet because Connor's not on the team. So Balaj essentially takes Connor's slot as far as for running backs. But we're all anticipating drafting a running back. I am, Sam is, Steeler Nation is. We're going to take a running back this year. I don't know when. I don't know if it's going to be first round, second round, third round, fourth round. We're taking one. So which running back would I take? And at least I put in some thought today, Sam. And one thing is Matt loves diverse running backs. He loves running backs that can go out and make plays with his feet. He likes running backs that can make plays with his legs, and make plays down the field and passing game, a misdirection, and also can pass block. We already have one of those in Jalen Samuels. Balaj looks like another one of that style. Now it's looking like if we get another diverse running back, it may be that Benny Snell might be the odd man out this season because he's strictly a 3-yard cloud of dust type of running back, straightforward, north south, pound and ground and pound, not much of a pass catcher at all. So
dimensional
right now, I'd have to think that, his lack of diversity may be the problem with him being able to stick to this roster with a new offensive coordinator.
Yeah, I could see that for sure. I love Jalen Samuels. I think he does offer a lot of diversity, and going into the season, I think that's what the team needs.
Yeah. And Ryan wants to know how you're doing.
Good.
Nice.
Yes. So excited.
And what's going on, Steeler Nation, there on Twitter? Thank you, Young Guapo. And cheers to you as well, Jonathan Clark, over there on Facebook. Cheers to you. I hope you're enjoying your beverage of choice as well tonight with Steeler Nation. Ryan also wants to know, is AB coming back? I want your input on this, Sam, because I haven't heard your take on this yet.
No, AB is not coming back. I don't know if you guys saw it, which I know this is like a whole thing, but there was like an AB burner the other night that everyone was engaging with on Twitter, and it's really hilarious. But yeah, still trashing the Steelers, still trashing the Roonies, trashing Tomlin. I'm like, yeah, it's AB's this, AB's that, AB this. I'm like, it could not be any more of an AB burner, but I definitely think he burnt that bridge.
Yeah, I agree with you 100%. I think we have moved on, especially since he cost us $21 million in the last time around for cutting his contract 3 years early. So I think that bridge has been successfully burnt. There's no chance of AB coming back. Unless the Steelers find a way to sign him for league minimum and just hang him out to cast, but he's not on a team yet.
Right. And we have Juju, and I don't see how that locker room would be with those two personalities, with what was said and what was publicly displayed there. I don't see that being.
And that's why that locker room broke down in the first place, was because they gave the offensive MVP that the Steelers players voted for to Juju that year, as opposed to Antonio Brown, and his ego could not take it. And that was when he started breaking down and lashing out and just becoming a terrible person to his teammates on the social media and in the locker room, from what I heard, it sounded like as well.
Yeah.
So, well, moving on from Antonio Brown, we've got some new signings also that just happened as well. We had a new offensive lineman, Rashard Coward, that was just signed from the Chicago, I believe. And Sam, did you hear how the news broke?
Yes.
From it, you are such a social media person. I want you to explain to Steeler Nation how this news broke and how unique it is for the news to break this way.
So it supposedly broke over someone playing a video game that they were like live streaming, and they heard it in the background, and then it made its way to a Reddit thread. And weirdly, Reddit always seems to be right about stuff like that. It's very strange if you can find them.
Yeah.
But yeah, it made its way to a Reddit thread, which made its way to Twitter. Mm-hmm. And then I think it was literally the very next day, because somebody on Steeler Nation did an article on it, and they were like, take this with a grain of salt, because it was found on a Reddit thread, and this person on the Reddit thread said they heard it over a live stream of a video game. Not sure which game it was. Yeah. But yeah, the very next day it was confirmed, and we're like, that is actually crazy.
That is crazy.
Because again, hadn't heard anything about that.
So not just, TikTok and Twitter and Facebook and Instagram. We are now hitting the Twitch and the Reddit for news breaking for NFL. And no matter how we can find it, it seems like it's just a fun way that we can find new information on how people move around within the NFL and sign with new teams. Also, an interesting sign that just happened yesterday. Steelers re-signed or signed their kicker, Jordan Berry, who was a free agent, and now he's back. I haven't seen the details. I imagine it's going to be fairly low, but I'm not sure because we were paying him a decent amount before, and it was a little high in my respect. So that's why I thought he was going to essentially be a casualty. We wouldn't have a chance of getting him back. But I will say that even though he lost his job to Colquitt last year, Sam, I thought last year was probably one of his best years for his performance, for his consistency, and he had a couple of really good field flipping boomers that really helped us out in some key situations last year.
Yeah, I mean, I'm on the fence with Jordan Berry because I feel like he can be like so back and forth, and sometimes I feel like in big moments he doesn't do what he needs to do, and that's so frustrating because you're like, that's your only job. That's your only job. Kick the football.
Don't shank it.
Yes. And so sometimes it gets frustrating, but I don't know where we find another. Yeah. So I'm okay with it. If it is on the lower end, if it's high, I'm going to be pissed.
Yeah. So, and I personally always love Aussie kickers. I mean, I'm a coffin kicker kind of guy. I love the backwards roll, and that's pretty much what he's signed for over his leg distance. He's not known as being like a 70-yard boomer, but he can consistently keep it inside the stop touchbacks from happening and pin the other team down. So that's what I like about the Aussie kickers, and I've always been up on them. But not to say that we cannot still upgrade and possibly even draft a punter this year. Who knows?
Right.
Who knows? So now we also have another move, and this one's still kind of out there, but there's other news on the internet that we heard that Villanueva was reportedly asked by the Steelers not to put his house on the market. And evidently his house is on the market. And there's a chance that, I guess you throw your house on the market when you're expecting to leave a team. Right. So what do you think is going on, at least with that news? And how are you feeling about that, Sam?
I do not think that Villanueva needs to come back. I think that his best years are behind him. I think when he did play for us, he was great, but the price tag, what is it, 14, 15 million in the ballpark of what?
That's what he's estimated at, but a lot of these price tags, I'm seeing like Juju was supposed to be a 14 million player.
Right.
He's signed for what, 8 or 9? 8?
Right.
I think it's a 1 year 8. Yeah.
1 year 8. Yep.
So, there is I think if this was a normal year, if the cap went up to 10 million, it was supposed to for every team, we would have seen those numbers across the board for everyone. Everybody would have had money to throw around. But I think we were talking about this. I think when we had all of you girls on the show, or maybe it was just with Jordan when I was talking to her, we thought that 16 million slated for Villanueva's next contract was a bit overvalued.
Yeah.
And I agree with you. There's no way the Steelers are going to be signing him in that range. So I'm saying if he's coming back in the 6 to 8 range, I'm not against that. But I'm with you as well. I thought his production was much better in the past. I think he's starting to, pull back a little bit, and he's not the player that he has been in these past couple of years, at least not the Pro Bowl caliber that we've been used to seeing.
And I think that's hard. I think that's maybe even part of the reason that Marquise Pouncey retired, to be honest. I think when you're used to being these Pro Bowl caliber players and you do start regressing, which of course you're going to with age, I think your pride takes a hit. You're not where you used to be, and you go out there every week and you're like, okay, this isn't the love that I felt for it. I'm not as good as I used to be. And I think that's hard. I think that that's something that he has to look at as well.
Yeah. And we're getting a couple more questions here from Howie on Facebook, Mike on Periscope from Twitter. And Howie again, is Le'Veon Bell coming back? What would you feel if Le'Veon Bell came back to the team? Because at least to me, I think that's more of a possibility happening than say an AB ever would.
Yeah, I think obvious. AB situation and Le'Veon's situation were two complete different scenarios, right? Like Bell sat out because he wanted more money. Yes, he did not go about it the right way. He ultimately did not get more money doing that. His production since then has been essentially non-existent. So it's not like if he did come back, he's going to come back on some high price tag. It's just not going to happen. I haven't actually seen any news on him. That's not saying it's not out there, but I haven't seen any team particularly interested in signing him.
Yeah, which is odd because you see there's a lot of talented running backs, like Adrian Peterson's still on the board. Frank Gore, though, Frank Gore's like 80 by now. He's still on the board. Fournette, I think. Did Fournette, did he re-sign with Tampa? I think he did.
Maybe he did.
Yeah, I can't recall, but I'm pretty sure Fournette re-signed with Tampa. But there's a lot of talented running back. And still Connor's on the board. I mean,
yeah.
You got, and these are people that were expecting more of a payday. And as we're seeing, the league is just not throwing out that kind of money. You got a couple people on the first day or within that legal tampering period that everybody has tended to do all of their moves before actual free agency started.
Right.
That seems to me was when the only money was thrown around.
Yeah.
Since that happened, it's been everybody's been undervalued, which they thought they were going to be.
Yeah, which it has to be. And I think, again, we're going to see a lot of short-term deals for that same reason. Teams aren't wanting to commit to long-term high money deals when we really don't know what the cap situation is going to be like even next year.
Yeah. And Zibs, yeah, he said Fournette did sign with Tampa, but thanks for helping us out with that there on Periscope. We already talked to, we think they're still going to draft a running back. That Balaj guy, he's got a lot of opportunity to make the team, but he still hasn't taken a slot yet. And Steelers are going to add somebody in the draft. We don't know who yet, but we'll see who can really fit this Matt Canada offense. Another good question. Cody, we'll get to yours soon. We're going to be talking about the draft here coming up right here in a second as well. And there's no chance of getting Watson, Ryan. We just don't have the space for it. If this would have happened next year, yes, we had a chance of getting Watson. But right now, and especially with his off-field stuff going on right now, I think it's going to be tough for anybody to kind of sign him. But I didn't know if that was a poison pill that they were trying to do within the area just to try to devalue him if he's going to leave the Houston area. Who knows? But it's a bad situation, no matter how you read it. If it's true, he deserves all the punishment in the world. And that's something that all teams have to keep in mind. And if they're trying to reach out for Watson, last really huge signing that this one blew me away. This is like Christmas Day for Steeler Nation.
Yes, I already know what you're going to say.
Yeah. I mean, you're sitting there, you know that your run defense is already crap. You lose all your big run guys. And then you hear Tyson Alualu is like, hey, yeah, remember when I agreed to that contract in Jacksonville? Turns out I don't want to play with them, and I'm staying in Pittsburgh for slightly less money. So that was like, I freaked out. I mean, you remember all of the writers, everybody on the thread, and that were texting back and forth and just freaking out about that. So how did it make you feel when you heard Tyson was staying in Pittsburgh?
Literally, I was like, first of all, like, nice things never happen to the Steelers. Like, nice things just don't happen to us. So I was like, okay. And then when I found out it was because he had actually tested positive for COVID.
Yeah.
Like, oh my gosh, this is the first time COVID hasn't actually just because he had 10 days that he had to sit at home and think about it. And supposedly all of his teammates were like, in his ear the entire time. And then he's like, okay, they're right. My family's here. My house is here. My friends are here. Yeah, it's his hometown. But again, he hasn't been there for how long? His home is now established in Pittsburgh. So oh my gosh, like, yeah, again, I've never been thankful for COVID in any regard, but I was like, oh my gosh, it gave Tyson time to think, to really think about it. And it worked out in our favor.
And you're right. The amount of times that COVID screwed us last season, it's great that we have a story where COVID actually helped us out.
Right.
And now Tyson Alualu is returning to that line. And the best part as well is that line is returning every single player that played for us. They're all rostered. I think we're 7 deep because now Wormley's back. Of course, we got Tuitt and Hayward. We got the young guns with Bugs and Davis and even Mondu, who I love Mondu. I think that guy's just fun.
And it's good too. It puts to rest the narrative that they signed Juju over Tyson, which everybody that has a brain knew that was not the case. But of course, the media wanted to spin it. Oh, that's what happened. And it was not.
Well, I thought really the choice had to be either Juju or Bud. Dupree, not over Tyson. Like that Tyson one, especially when he signed for 2 years, $6 million, I was just screaming. Like it broke my
Right.
heart as a Steeler fan because I'm like, $3 million a year. The Steelers couldn't
Right.
find a way to open
Yes.
up $3 million a year for this guy who was our best run stopper and one of the top PFF rated run stoppers in the entire NFL last year.
Right.
So you find a way to keep that guy, and fortunately,
especially that price. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
So it's not like we're going to break the bank on him. It's not like the amount of money that Juju, the pay cut that Juju wanted to accept, or that he did accept just to stay in Pittsburgh, was enough to at least make sure that we could sign people like this, and that's great.
Yep.
So now we're at the point too that we can talk about positions of need for the draft. And what I wanted to do actually is something that people don't normally do. And these are the positions that are not needed for the draft. These are the positions we are probably not going to pick up a person at these positions. First one I wanted to talk about, which still may be a little controversial for not needed, is quarterback. It's obviously Ben's last year. It's Rudolph's last year. And it's also Haskins is only signed to a 1-year deal. Now, I can see either of them being extended after the season fairly easily before free agency starts. But it doesn't seem like this year, if we're trying to go all in for Ben to win a Super Bowl, for me, unless somebody insane drops in the first, like a Fields drops in the first round, I'm not going to be upset as a Steeler fan if we end up grabbing Fields, because I know we got a guy for decades. And that would be an awesome thing, but I don't see them adding somebody anywhere in the top 5 rounds. Just me personally.
Yeah. It's so hard with the Steelers because this is part of the reason I'm like, I don't love draft prospecting for this part, especially right now, because I feel like they've been all over the place where they've even been. I have no idea what they're thinking. Like today, I can't even think, Mons, right? Someone was out there prospecting, profiling that. And it's like, okay, didn't see that coming. So every single day I'm like, I have no idea what we're going to pick at any position. And I don't see us trading up into the top 10 or even top 15.
Yeah.
So I do think they could go either way, but if they did, I would say it's probably going to be a later round. Yeah.
Okay. Next position would be guard. Obviously, we know the Steelers' woes at center and tackle that they need to draft for. It seems that we got 2 entrenched starters in Dotson and David DeCastro. Some good depth behind them as well. Might get a little bit of depth there as well in the draft, but for right now, that's not a position of need.
Yeah, I agree with that. Yeah.
Wide receiver now. Now, with Juju coming back, which is huge, we've got the same starting 5 receivers that we had last year on the roster. Ray, Juju, Washington, DJ, and which one I forget? Oh, Claypool. Can't forget
Claypool.
So,
yeah.
Those 5 guys, and the reason why we kept 5 as opposed to 6, because other years when we were keeping 6, we essentially had one receiver basically being the gunner and playing special teams, and that is Claypool's role. And now we have a receiver that's actually playing it within the offense who is also our gunner. So that kind of saved us a position. So it's why we only have 5 receivers as opposed to 6. Could add another receiver. I don't know. Or maybe the only thing I could think of is if they're going to draft a receiver, they're going to draft a slot guy that might be able to compete with kick and punt returns with Ray. That would be the only thing I could see them for a need, because everything else seems like they have.
Yeah, I thought they not drafted. I thought they just signed one. Simmons, maybe. Am I crazy? I don't know. I thought that they just drafted one, and that was kind of what I was thinking. Punt returning with Ray, competing for that, because some of the routes that he ran last season were very questionable. Like run forward, not backwards, please. Yeah. So I don't think I would scream if they drafted a wide receiver in an early round. I would lose it.
And another position that we're not taking fullback. We've got our guy there in Derek Watt. We're not taking special teams now with Barry being re-signed. We're not going to draft a punter. We're not going to draft a kicker. We're not going to draft a long snapper. Hopefully never, ever, 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 ever draft a long snapper again. But We'll see. At least we're not doing it this year. So 2 other positions that I wanted to talk about that we're not going to draft is what we alluded to a little bit earlier with Tyson Alualu coming back and having the same 7 on the front line. I don't think we have a need to draft a defensive end or a defensive lineman.
Yeah, I don't think so. I think our defense is pretty solid where it's at right now.
So Steeler Nation, I asked a poll for you over here at the Steeler Nation, podcast Twitter site @_SN podcast. Question was, what is the biggest draft need for the Steelers right now? Number 1, well, there was 4 positions listed: cornerback, offensive tackle, running back, and center. I won't tell you who's the leader in right now, but what is your number 1, Sam?
Mine, I've been conflicted on this because at first I was like, I don't even want to take a running back in the top, I don't know, third round. Now my stance has changed a little bit. And I'm like, okay, I think with getting some of our key pieces back that I didn't expect as far as Juju and Tyson, because by day 5 of Juju watch, I was like, all right, I don't know about this anymore. I would still say I'm on the fence between tackle and running back on who our top need is going to be. And I don't think it's one dimensional. I think the Steelers are going to take whichever top player in that position is available at number 24.
Yeah. And for me, I said cornerback. And Steeler Nation, 849 votes coming in. You guys did not agree with me. Only 5.8% were with me on cornerback because for me, Nelson leaving creates an issue where, yeah, you've got Sutton to be able to start either in Nelson's spot or slot receiver, but someone else has to fill in at one of those other spots. So for me, that's the number 1. But next 23% of you said center. Next highest at 27%, which now we have your 2 positions there, 27% offensive tackle. And the rounding number 1 vote for biggest draft need for Steelers right now, according to Steeler Nation, is running back at 44%. So I do not disagree with any of those. And this is why this draft, and we've been talking about this too, Sam, why it's going to be so crazy this year is because we don't know how it's going to shake out. We just don't. It can go any way.
Right. And nobody's wrong in that regard. I think people also want running back first because it's like, oh, that's a big name. Look at these plays that they're making. You know, it's something to be really, really excited about. Like usually people don't get that excited over defensive linemen. Like no one's like, especially I'm going to say is like a casual fan is going to be like, oh, cool. I'm never going to get that guy's jersey. So I don't care. But I do think they're going to pick whoever the best player available that fills a need, that is who they're going to go with, which is why it's chaos right now because I have no idea. They're all over the place.
I know. And Zibs, I'm with you. Safety and wide receiver, for the love of God, don't draft those in the first round. Definitely not. Joe Jones is asking, what do we think of Kellen Mond? I did see that the Steelers were working him out. Was it today? Because I think I looked at him and I like his ability as being able to make plays with his legs and plays with his arm. And I think that he could be a day 2 possibility, but I don't think the Steelers would take him in the second. If he lasted till the 3rd, they may, because he seems like he could fit that Matt Canada offense, in my opinion.
Yeah.
Ryan wants to know if we can go unbeaten next year.
No.
We have a tough
schedule. It's very tough.
It is a rough schedule. I'm not gonna this past year. I mean, we had the NFC East and we had the AFC South, and those were pretty much easy games for us comparatively for the rest of the league. But yeah, it's going to be a much tougher. I'm not saying it can't happen. I'm just not betting on it this year, Ryan.
Yeah. I'm not betting on it. After going 11-0 and thinking, oh my gosh, this is so great. And that was like the worst 11-0 season to finish. So no, this season's harder. So I'm going to go no.
Gabe Gotti giving you a shout out on YouTube. Samantha in his house.
Aw, thanks, Gabe.
Anthony Schwartz in the 4th. Not that up to the draft on who Anthony Schwartz is yet, Joe. I know in these next couple podcasts, I'll be knowing a little bit better. Lily wants a running back there on Twitter. Same thing. Calvin over on Facebook. I'm with you, Max. I want one of the top cornerbacks. If JC or JC Horn or the other guy that's the son of the NFL player, I'm going off the top of my head. One of those guys, if they're available, I would definitely consider taking them in the 1st. I would, but
terrified when the Steelers draft cornerbacks, like absolutely just pit to my stomach because I just feel like we're cursed in that. But it is a position of need. So I don't really see them signing it undrafted.
yeah.
So at this point, we'll see what happens.
And we've got a lot of pro and anti drafting Harris people coming in right now. Of course, he's one of the top 3 backs. Obviously, I was talking with Morgan on the last podcast. We both were talking a little bit more about ETN a bit, and also with Ben and Matt when we had the draft podcast last week. They taught me how to pronounce his name correctly. It's like the letter E, the letter T, and the letter N. So now I can do it perfectly every time now. So I'm more of an ETN guy than a Harris guy personally, just because of his diversity in the system and the way that Matt Canada would be able to utilize his talents. I think that would be a little bit more that you can do with him in that offense than you could with Harris. But I wouldn't be disappointed if they got Harris, to tell you the truth.
No, I don't. If anybody throws a fit over getting Harris, like I don't know if you watch football, but I do think that ETN fits our scheme better, but that's not to say that we wouldn't be successful with Najee Harris. So,
and that's it, Cody. It was Samuels Jr. Yeah, I was trying to remember the other cornerback. I'm very high on Horn, very high on Samuels Jr. Both are sons of NFL players. Horn's dad used to be a wide receiver in the NFL, and I remember when he used to play. So yeah, we got Surtain. Yeah, Surtain as well. Rick, thank you very much. Any one of those players, I would just be absolutely happy to have on the team. And this is one of those years too. There's so many quarterbacks that are rated as first round quarterbacks, 5 or 6. And so this is the year that like tackles are going to get pushed down the board. Cornerbacks are going to get pushed down the board. And you might have a couple people start jumping on these running backs, especially when you think that we might be taking a running back. And if it may fall out, so we might get one of these talented corners. If it falls into our lap, this is the year to grab it, honestly.
Yeah, the good thing about this draft is that it is so deep in the offensive line that it does make you wonder. Like, that's why I could see them going running back in the first round.
Yeah. So if we're drafting, at least for my positions of need, my number top 4 we've already talked about: cornerback, tackle, center, and running back. So now the next ones that I think that we're going to be drafting as well, a blocking tight end who also can make some plays downfield. That would be awesome. Fairmouth from Penn State. It would be ideal if we can figure out a way to get him in the second. That would be awesome. Outside linebacker depth and inside linebacker depth, I think both of those need to be upgraded because we've lost starters at both positions, and safety depth because with Sean Davis looking like he's not returning, we need somebody that can come in and help back up those positions, maybe a money backer, but somebody also that can really help out on special teams.
Yeah, I agree with that.
And now, Steeler Nation, we're at the time. We're taking questions from Steeler Nation across the platforms: YouTube, Twitter, Facebook. Make sure to come on and throw your questions. I'm going to go to the first questions that came in here from the SteelerNation.com forum. All you have to do is sign up for free at the SteelerNation.com forum. We love talking football. I put up a thread before every single podcast. Ask your opinions, and they get to sound off first. So Ike Kelly had a great question for you specifically, Sam, and he wants to know, what is Sam's real view on Juju, long-term specifically, because he knows you are such a Juju hound.
So it's so funny. I had a DM this week, and some guy is very strange, but was like, "You're a Juju bee, aren't you?" I'm like, "That's not a thing."
A Juju bee?
A Juju bee, apparently.
I like it, like a Juju bumblebee, like Juju bee.
Yeah.
I kind of like that. I think that's kind of
I guess somebody from, I don't know, Pat McAfee's show.
Yeah.
That as a Juju fans, I guess that's what he's calling them now, is Juju. So I got that this week, and I was like, I don't know what that is. No, but the biggest thing that I love about Juju is his physicality.
Yes.
I love that he makes those big plays. Like, he will use his body to block. He's not afraid. I think this is a prove it year in regards to, he did only sign a 1-year deal, but given the cap situation, he had to. I mean, his hands were kind of forced. Same thing with the Steelers. I mean, I'm still shocked that he got $8 million.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I'm shocked that he took $8 million over
Yeah.
what he was offered for other teams.
You had the chance to play with Patrick Mahomes. Like, you're guaranteed to be, in my opinion,
Yeah.
up for a ring next year, and you chose to stay in Pittsburgh. So
Mad props.
yeah,
Mad props.
incredible.
Yeah.
So regardless, I guess if he doesn't stay past next year, I'm just happy that, we got him for one more year. So that's just the way I'm looking at it now.
And also now the Steelers are in a situation where they can pay him next year. The Steelers have a ton of cap room next year with
Right.
Ben not on the roster. I think it's only like 9 mil. I think it's counted against the dead cap for if he leaves next year, which is nothing to lose a starting quarterback. But Steelers are around 100 million under the cap for next year. So they could even franchise tag him next year and not have to worry about it for another year. But I think with the amount of space that they'd have, they'd be able to set something up. I mean, obviously, I think Watt's going to get paid also next year. There's going to be a lot of people.
Right.
I mean, you got to think of also Minka Fitzpatrick as well. So like some big blockbuster contracts might be happening next year. And Juju, I think is part of that plan because I think he's part of that core, to tell you the truth. That solid.
I do.
Yeah.
As much as people want to say, oh, his TikToks and this and that, and like I will never agree with anyone on that. He's not out getting DUIs. He's not out having 19 allegations against him currently. He's not somebody that you have to worry about his off-field behavior. And honestly, I don't think you can put a price tag on that. Yes, he likes to do a TikTok, which he makes, like, from what I read, $100,000 per TikTok. What would you do a TikTok for $100,000? Because I would make a fool of myself for that. So yeah, I'm just like, I think that's also allowed him to take a lesser contract because he does have that income that's coming in from that.
Yeah.
But the thing that concerns me is that when Juju came on Yinzers, is that he said one of the things that he looks at in a team is their quarterback. And going into next season, we have no idea what that's going to look like.
Yeah. So Tibbs has the next question for us. He wants to know what happens with the transition to a new offensive coordinator like we have in Canada. Does the whole old Fichtner system get dumped and Canada is allowed to implement something from the ground up? Do the formations and terminology remain the same? I'd have to think that this is kind of like a situation like Haley. When Haley came in, he brought in his own offense. It was new, and Ben had a lot of pushback because he didn't get the terminology initially. So they had to work on that. I think that they'll work with the terminology to help keep things as consistent as possible. But as you saw from last year as well, you saw that some of that movement and motion pre-snap that Canada is known for started to get worked into the offense last season, early in the year. In the beginning of the season, it looked like when we were firing on all cylinders, we were doing some crazy stuff pre-snap. And then it seemed like we started getting a couple injuries along the line and just got away from it. And then our running game fell apart and then we didn't do it at all. So I'd say yes, in that respect. This is going to be completely different than Fichtner's offense. I'm hoping it's not as predictable. I just want an offense that isn't predictable. We've had some measure of predictability within Haley's system and within Fichtner's system. I thought Arians was actually the best one out of being unpredictable on his plays. He was the one more apt to have Ben do crazy stuff on first and second down as opposed to just running ahead and giving the ball to running back every time. So, but we'll see how this works out. But I'm expecting this to be a completely new offense, but still keeping in mind that Ben is running it. So trying to keep the terminology working for Ben so he understands it for the season.
Yeah. I mean, going into it, again, assuming this is Ben's last season, there has to be that give and take. Like, you can't expect a quarterback of his age to just drop everything he knows and be like, okay, I'm going to learn this whole new system for 1 year. Like, that's just not going to happen. But also, Ben saw what happened last year. So that also. So I think there is going to be a middle ground for both of them.
Litos wants to know, is there a chance to get a significant free agent left in a position? Do you think that they would invest? And for him, he says cornerback. Do you think Steelers are going to grab any more free agents?
I don't know. I mean, the Steelers, I would prefer that they take a free agent cornerback that's tried and proven, and we know because, again, they just suck at drafting them. But what is that price tag, and can they afford it, which is likely not, which is why they haven't signed one. But the longer it goes, the less money these players are going to take. And again, it'll probably be a 1 year deal.
Yeah.
So, I mean, it could happen, but.
And a lot of the players look like they're taking 1-year deals because they know this is a throwaway year. You're not going to get your big contract this year, and it sucks. The market is done. There's no market this year. So wait for next year, get paid next year when the salary cap balloons back up like it should with the extra 17th game, all that crap. It's going to be a big deal for next year. So for me, cornerback, I can see him taking. Another one that I think they're going to target before the draft would be tight end. I think the Steelers are going to bring in another tight end. Jesse James's name has been thrown around a bit. If I'm going to throw a name out there, I wouldn't be disappointed if he came back because he's a good number 2 tight end. He can block. He can catch the ball down the field, and he did catch the ball on the goal line. And thank you to the NFL for screwing us on that one to give the 1 seed to the Patriots that season. Those bastards. So, but yeah, I like Jesse James as being a nice low value guy. I also like Reed as well from San Francisco. He wasn't used much. I know he's had a lot of concussion problems. So we're probably shying away from those types of guys that are tight ends. But I love his skill set.
Yeah.
Still Right also asks us, do we win the Super Bowl this year?
Always yes.
Always yes.
Always yes. I mean, I always think, okay, it's going to be a hard season, but we could do it. And so it's Ben's last year and we're going to throw everything we have at it. So
follow-up question, does Ben win league MVP this season?
No.
I would say yeah. I'm with you. I'm no as well because he's yet to receive an MVP vote in his career. So he would have to have an amazing year, go 16-0, have 60 touchdowns to no interceptions, and he might get a vote.
Yeah.
I don't know if he'll win it, but he'll get a vote.
The media, the league, they hate the Steelers, the narrative of that. I'm saying no.
And last question from Still Right. Who has the bigger season this year, Juju or Claypool?
This
is a good question. I like
that. Is a good question. And it's really hard to answer because I haven't seen that Matt Canada offense implemented. So last season, it was interesting because we didn't truly have a number 1 wide receiver. That ball was spread around all over the place. 1 week it was Deontay, the next week it was Claypool, the next week it was Juju, and it back and forth, So I don't know if Ben will have a clear number 1. Most reliable is Juju. That's just who I think. I mean, Deontay definitely has to get those drops under control. Ebron, I know tight end, but he's the same thing. Claypool, he's huge. There's no reason he can't make those plays. And I think now that it's a year under his belt, we will definitely see more of him. So I honestly see three number 1s that are fighting for that spot. And so I think it will be very interesting because it's hard to rule out Claypool, Johnson, or Juju. It could absolutely be any one of them.
Exactly. I'm with you 100% on that. And it's now Claypool's second year. He's going to be worked more into the offense, where last year he was trying to work his way into the offense. He's part of the offense now. So he's going to have a bigger season. Now, if you're going to relate that to Juju still ended up with 97 catches last year.
Right.
Quietly with 97 catches.
It's so funny because someone was saying that to me. They're like, he sucks. I'm like, yes, 97 receptions and 9 touchdowns sucks. Absolutely. Yeah. And they were like, that was when AB was here. I was like, literally.
Last year.
Right. Your Steelers picking the arguing about it. And I was like, and he also plays in the slot. He's like, he doesn't play in the slot. I'm like, I don't know why I'm talking to you because clearly you do not watch football and you just watch media and Juju sucks. So.
Yeah. Right. Cooley Man also asks us, should the Steelers sign Grant Stewart as an undrafted free agent after the draft? And he is a Houston fanatic, and this is a Houston guy. Now, if you don't know who Grant Stewart is, which I did not until I looked at his highlights today, I found that he's actually pretty interesting to watch. He's more of like he's got that big hair flowing out underneath of his helmet. He makes a lot of tackles downfield. He's just a tackling machine there at inside linebacker. And it looked like he made a lot of his plays coming back from the secondary to make hits around the line of scrimmage. So I read his draft write-up stating that he's great against the run, would be a great special teams player from what I saw. And he does play all the special teams as well for Houston. I think that is definitely a way he can make it in this league. They were saying the knock on him was being able to cover people downfield. I thought I saw from his highlights he was willing to do that. He was making some plays downfield. He was getting in passing lanes. He just looks like a football player. His tape actually reminded me a lot of Matakavich's tape when we saw him, and I think he was out of Temple before we drafted him. And look at who he is now. He's like the league's best special teams player, and still doing it up there in Buffalo. I wish we still had Matakavich. I loved that guy. Loved me some big
to
red.
watch. Yeah.
So yeah, if he's half the player that Matakavich is, looking at his tape, I'd be happy for the Steelers to add him as an undrafted rookie free agent to help bolster our special teams. Also, follow-up question. If a quality offensive tackle and a good running back are graded close to best player available in round 1, which do you take, Sam?
I don't know.
Tackle or running back? Top tackle, top running back.
If they're both there?
For best player available, yeah.
I guess you have to look at that point. I think you'd have to go running back.
Yeah.
I think so, which normally I would shy away from that because I'd be like, oh, we don't take a running back in the first round. But that being said, you're only going to have so many huge, big playmaking running backs in this draft, whereas defensive tackle, I mean, it's pretty deep. And so,
yeah. I am not going to disagree with you. I'll keep your answer. Drink Iron City. Cope and Samantha, thank you for doing these podcasts. First question is, how far a drop-off in the running back position is it from the big three, Harris, Etienne, and Williams? And from what I've seen, it's a pretty big drop-off after those three. I think both of those would be day one people. If Williams has the possibility of lasting to day 2, but I wouldn't be surprised if all three ended up going day 1. There are still playmaking and diverse running backs later in the draft, and you're always going to be able to find them, especially smaller school options. But they're much more of a big question mark behind Williams, Etienne, and Harris. I mean, I agree with that.
Yeah.
I don't think, if the Steelers don't take a running back in round 1, I don't see them taking a running back again until possibly 3rd round. And if not, definitely in the 4th round with one of their 2 picks.
Yeah, I agree with that, which is kind of why I just said what I did. Cause I'm like, after those 3 are gone, it's huge drop off.
Next question from Drink Iron City. As is, are either of you worried about our center position, and could either or combo of the 2 actually keep that position serviceable to a degree we need it to be? And I'm very concerned. I don't know how concerned you are, Sam.
Yeah, I mean, we have BJ Finney and JC Hassenauer. Hopefully I'm saying that right. But yeah, that's a huge concern. Again, you're going from I think, what did Pouncey make? 10 Pro Bowls?
Yeah.
10 or 11?
Yeah, right around there.
Literally is going to be a Hall of Fame center.
Yeah.
So replacing him is going to be hard. And it's definitely a position of concern. Not only that, but that's been over half of Ben's career that he's played with Pouncey. So
exactly. Yeah,
that familiarity is gone too. It's a huge concern.
And for me, the Steelers' next center is not on their roster right now. Mm-hmm. I wrote an article just a month ago about how serious the Steelers are at drafting centers and having a center being the mainstay. I think they only have 7 centers since 1959 on their team. And you got Mansfield for over a decade. You've got Iron Mike for over a decade in the 70s into the 80s. Then you had Dermetti Dawson 80s into the 90s. Then Pouncey after Hardings. I mean, Hardings was a conversion center, and he did a great job with us. Hartwig was conversion, then Hardings, or no, the other way around. Hardings was the conversion. Hartwig was a center, and we brought him in after Hardings, and he did pretty well as well. But then we had the Sean Mahan year, which I'd like to forget. And after that, we have, Pouncey. And Pouncey's been filling in ever since. So Steelers are very consistent at centers, and the way that they build offensive lines is always from the middle. So their next great, and even if they ended up going center with the first pick, I wouldn't be upset with it.
I wouldn't be upset.
I'd just be like, this is the next guy that's going to be on our team for the next 10 years.
Right. And it's such a position of need.
It is.
So
And final question, at least from Steeler Nation, Samantha, when it comes to motorcycles, are you the passenger or the driver?
Oh, driver.
Yeah. What kind of motorcycle?
I have no idea, but I would be.
Nice. I've got my motorcycle license as well. I'm a driver. I haven't been a passenger since I was a kid, but
Passenger. Yeah, I have to say driver.
nice. And Drink Iron City says, thanks for doing these as they make great company for me while eating supper after a hard day's work. And cheers there, Drink Iron City. Love talking to you over there on the board. And we'll see you soon. And switching over to the chats, we've got some questions. Cody Bickers over on Twitter asks, who's going to be the first to get signed long term? Minka, TJ, or Juju?
Oh, it's definitely gonna be TJ or Minka. I would have to say TJ.
Mine would be yes. I think they're going to sign all three. I think this is our core. Next year we have money for centuries. It's money for days. We're going to be signing everybody next year. It's going to be great.
They definitely are signing all three, but they're like, if one had to come first, I think TJ's comes first.
And hey, Russ, we're getting some shout outs from here. It's the first time on the show. He's really digging it. We're happy you're enjoying it over there on YouTube, Russ. Thanks.
Yeah, awesome.
Let's see. Nice. And Russ is also stating that he's got some people in the know and that Ben and Canada already have a great relationship. So that would be really nice to see if those two really have a smooth transition and get some fun ability to watch those guys play here this upcoming year. He said Canada and Bell are going to work great together. I hope we get Bell. I wouldn't mind having Bell over there with him.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, again, I'm not opposed to Bell coming back.
Joe Jones over on Twitter. Tommy Tremble is scary and run blocking and would be a great tight end for us. I am not against that, Joe. We definitely need some tight end help, and we need a tight end that can block because we all know Eric Ebron is a pass catcher, and that's pretty much it.
Not the biggest Ebron fan, I know. Morgan and I were like thinking about talking about this that week because there's not too many things that Morgan and I disagree on, but Ebron is one of them. So
oh yeah, I hear you. I mean, I like him as a person. I think he's a good personality on the team. I think he needs to work on consistency with his pass catching because he'll make a great play in between three players and then drop a wide open play. So that's the stuff that always infuriates me. And hopefully Deontay Johnson switches that up. Russ is saying he's working out like a madman on his footwork and catching and learning to keep his hands outstretched. Watched him catch about 40 tough passes and he didn't drop any of them. And Russ, I absolutely love DJ's hand positioning. He has great hand positioning. And even when he came out of the draft, I love his hands completely from that, but he seems to be keeping his hands hard or tight when he's receiving the ball as opposed to giving every time the ball hits his hands. And he's starting to get that down. Like AB just had that soft give every time it hit his hands. It just always drops back into that nice cradle. And I see DJ becoming that type of receiver. And like I said, he had a higher floor than AB did coming out of college. He was the best receiver I saw breaking the line of scrimmage, breaking press coverage. And that I've been, looking after in the past 10 years for the Steelers as far as for them drafting people. So
and I think part of it last season too, it becomes mental, right? They get in their head about it. And then it's like, oh, I can't drop this. And then they're so in their head that they're just dropping it now.
And Russ was correcting us. He meant that he'd like to have that Ben would like to have Bell back, not necessarily him personally, though he would like to have him Bell back too. So thanks for chiming in there, Russ. We love that. We love the interaction from everybody there, Steeler Nation. Thank you so much across Twitter, YouTube, Facebook, and of course there at SteelerNation.com forum. Everybody, great questions tonight. And we have to follow and thank you very much to Samantha for joining us. I know you are on Twitter at Tokyo XMO. That's TOKYO XMO, correct on Twitter?
So that's actually Morgan's at.
Dang it, I got the wrong one. Oh, everybody, forget that. I'm editing that one out.
That's okay. That's Morgan's at. I think she was on last week, right?
Yes, she was. That's why I had it up on this one.
Yeah, that's okay. So mine's
Samantha James _.
Yep.
I remember that one too.
There you go. Yeah.
Nice. So Samantha James _ is the Twitter handle. And what's your Instagram handle?
It is Samantha X James _. So there's just an X is the difference.
Awesome. And guys, so you have a Yinsers podcast coming up, I believe, on Thursday night.
Yes.
And
with
who
Dee.
with Aditi Kinkhabwala, the Steelers beat writer for NFL Network, correct?
Yes.
That's a huge bring. So I will definitely be checking that out. What time is that one supposed to be?
9 p.m. Eastern.
9 p.m. Eastern time. Steeler Nation, tune in 2 nights from now, Thursday at 9 o'clock. We're going to be listening to Aditi Kinkhabwala and the Yinsers Nation girls over here interviewing her, which always do an awesome job in the interviews. And I always love each and every one of them. So I'll be checking that out tomorrow night as well. So cheers. And thank you so much too, Sam, for being on the show.
Oh, of course. Anytime.
Sweet. And Steeler Nation, make sure you follow the Yinsers podcast as well on their social media. Their Instagram is Yinshers Official. That's YINZHERSOFFICIAL. Twitter and Facebook at Yinshers, YINZHERS. YouTube is the same as us, youtube.com/Steeler Nation. And make sure to go over to Steeler Nation gear page, get geared up in some great shirts. Are you wearing one of the Steeler Nation shirts? You might be having one on. No, I don't think you're wearing one.
Nope. I literally ran straight from work in here in 3 minutes. And I was like, oh, nope, not tonight.
And I got my Maui Brewing shirt, so unfortunately can't get this one to Steeler Nation, but they got some great designs over there. Click on the gear page, get geared up for your virtual tailgates and virtual draft parties coming up, which we're all going to be involved with. We're going to have some fun news on how we're going to be covering the draft here, all in real time for Steeler Nation, and some exciting stuff to talk about here in the upcoming weeks. Read our great articles over at SteelerNation.com, tweet us at Steeler Nation, Instagram us at SteelerNation.com, and follow the Steeler Nation podcast on Twitter at _SN podcast. And you can follow me if you wish at SN Striker, Striker spelled with a Y. Thanks for joining us on the SteelerNation.com podcast, sponsored by Total Sports Enterprises. I'm your host, G.Stryker, with Samantha James, rooting along with you as always. Go Steelers!